Hey guys, so at this point, most of you know that mine and Micah's baby, Evelyn, has spina bifida. But if you are like me and Micah, when we first found out, we had heard of spina bifida, but we weren't really sure what it was and what it meant for our baby. So I thought I would talk about Evelyn's spina bifida and what her outcomes looked like before we did the fetoscopic surgery here in Texas. So Evelyn has the most severe kind of spina bifida. It's called Myelomeningocele, and I think I totally butchered that, probably. But like I said, it's the most severe kind, and it's where a baby has an opening over her spine. So the way the doctors explained it to me is that when babies are forming, when their cells are forming, everything lines up like a nice zipper and everything's kind of nice and tight. But for Evelyn, her zipper didn't close all the way, so she has a hole right above her spine. And spina bifida can occur anywhere on a baby's spine. Evelyn's spina bifida, is between the L4 and the L5, which is lower down on her back. So when we met with Seattle Children's, they kind of went over all the pieces that impact spina bifida, children with spina bifida, and what it looks like. So the first thing you think about when you hear spina bifida is mobility, and it's definitely going to impact her mobility. Seattle Children's told us that she would potentially be able to walk around the house, but likely with a limp. But then outside of the house, she would need some sort of support, whether those are braces or crutches or even potentially a wheelchair for longer distances. The other piece that it impacts is her brain. So babies with spina bifida often develop something called hydrocephalus. Hydro means water and cephalus means brain. So it's literally water on the brain. And what this means is that her brain is not able to regulate the amount of spinal fluid in her brain like normal people can. So they have to put in what's called a shunt. And a shunt they put in with brain surgery, which is kind of scary. But the shunt goes into the back of her brain and then it goes down into her tummy, and it just releases the spinal fluid into her stomach so that she has a normal amount of spinal fluid in her brain, and it releases the pressure. The other part that it impacts are her bladder and bowels. The doctors told us that, the most likely scenario, the most common scenario of babies with spina bifida is that she would have up pressure. And what that means is that she wouldn't be able to release her bladder on her own. So she would need a catheter in full time to release her bladder. And that's something we would have to do for her as a baby and something she would have to learn to do for herself as an adult. The other less likely scenario is that she would have down pressure, so it's the opposite. Instead of having everything stay in there hold tight, she would have a leaky bladder and it would just come out whenever it felt like it. That's the least likely scenario, but they did prepare us for that. Her bowels, she's likely to have leaky bowels. They said, for the rest of her life, she should plan on bringing an extra pair of clothes with her wherever she goes, because you just never know when something's going to happen. They did say that there is a lot in modern medicine that can help with the leaky bowels and kind of keeping everything regulated, as well as a good diet. So we're kind of hopeful about that piece of it. 85% of babies with spina bifida have normal IQs. There's about 10 to 15% that have mild to moderate IQs, and it was explained to me that's kind of like upper elementary to lower elementary. And then there's a very small percentage that have very severe cognitive issues. And I asked, how do we know? How do we know what she's going to be like? And they said there's no way to know until she gets to elementary age. So we got a ways till we find out how that is, but hoping for the best. And then the last piece that it impacts, or it could impact, there's about 10 to 15% of babies with spina bifida that have issues with breathing and swallowing. And that comes from the hydrocephalus, from the pressure on her brain pushing down, and it just makes it hard for them to swallow, and it would require her to have a breathing tube. And that's probably one of the scariest pieces for me and Micah, because again, there's no way for us to know what it's going to be like until she's born. So that's spina bifida, and that's Evelyn's spina bifida. That's the type she has and where it's located and the things that it impacts. But if you have other questions about our spina bifida, feel free to ask. I mean, at this point, Mike and I are kind of an open book, so just let us know.